In 5, 4, 3.
Thomas Neal here. Just got back home from the Ferguson response, and we just had 21 days of prayer and worship, and I just want to thank you all for what you've done. But I also wanted to share some testimonies of what God did while we were in Ferguson, and what He's planning to do as I return, and as things continue to carry forth. God definitely broke in Ferguson during those 21 days. I'd say the first week or so was just God saying, hey, come worship and pray, and I will come into the situation. And then the other 2 weeks, it was as if God was just there, and hearts were easily captivated by His beauty. We first got into Ferguson, and the atmosphere was very hard. You couldn't get a word in edgewise when you tried to witness to people and try to share with them the love of Jesus, and it was a very hard place. And we went in thinking that if we prayed and worshiped for 21 days, God would give us a strategy on what to do to impact the hearts there in Ferguson. But what we didn't know is God said that was the solution, and so we saw many come to Jesus, probably around 50 is what our current numbers state, and a few times God told us to be in the midst of protests, and many people would be afraid of that, but we knew that that's what God was calling us to, and we know that the safest place to be is right where God wants you, regardless of where that is. And so we went down to the protests, and we saw one protest turn into a prayer meeting, and Mike Brown's uncle himself was leading worship that night, which was phenomenal. God really spoke about reconciliation in that event. As the weeks went on, we really saw people kind of really open up their heart to what we had to say, because what we realized is that as we raised up an altar, as we worshiped God, He really dwelled in the praises of His people. And as He fell in Ferguson, we really felt the atmosphere shift, and that the enemy's strongholds were loosening, and that God was breaking in and softening hearts. And during our time, the second time, I got the privilege to lead worship in the midst of probably around 700 protesters, and we really saw God use that as a way to kind of confuse what the enemy was trying to do. They came very violent, very angry, but we saw peace fall in that moment. We saw an angry protester hand a megaphone to my friend JT, and he was able to preach the gospel loudly, and people heard it. And as he preached, we really saw God step in and bring peace after cultivating an atmosphere of worship in the midst of what in the spirit was very much warfare. And so that was impactful for me to see God step in, regardless of where we were. But what was important about that is that there were intercessors in the tent that were receiving texts about what was going on in the protests, and we saw God break in the tent and give them words of knowledge and what to pray about. And when they prayed, we saw peace break out in the crowd. And so as this thing continues, that's an encouragement to you that as things continue to happen, if you can't be on the ground when crisis happens, you can intercede and you can pray, and that your prayers really will affect what's going on there. Really loved just being able to witness the Spirit move in the tent. Now, obviously, this was 10 hours a day, every day for 21 days of prayer and worship, and we just really felt God break in various nights. You just feel the atmosphere shifting as teams came from all over St. Louis and all over America, and a few people from even around other nations came in, and we really got to see God break in, and it was amazing. And this isn't the end. This is just the beginning. Myself and a few others really feel it on their hearts to return to Ferguson and to continue to plow and see God continue to move, to raise up disciples in the ones that got saved, and to really see the fulfillment of the revival God has in Ferguson and in the greater St. Louis area. Thanks, guys. Love you guys, and God bless.